Coffee and Co-Read, your source for all things literary with Catherine
and Kristen, where we believe there's nothing better than a hot coffee and an awesome book. Join us for our virtual book club where we take one book a month and dive into all the drama, adventure, and romance we can find. Hi, Catherine.
Hey, Kristen.
So, if you have been listening for a long time, you might be aware that Catherine and I are obsessed with Pride and Prejudice. Like any good, romance reader, it's the very stereotypical white girl response to, what's your favorite book? Definitely Pride and Prejudice. We're stereotypical. We've come to terms with it. We've accepted it about ourselves.
We are like other girls.
Yes. Yeah. We're not those interesting, different girls that are in books. We are just like the rest of them. So Pride and Prejudice is one of our favorite books. We've read it multiple times. We've seen all the iterations that they've done in cinema and whatever. We've done
the YouTube series. Like, there are some really good ones.
There are some really good ones. If you have not checked out the Lizzie Bennet Diaries on YouTube, it's obviously an older series. It came out, probably like at least 8 to 10 years ago now at this point.
Yeah.
But it is a videography sort of modernized Pride and Prejudice concept. It's really good. Mm-hmm. So I would check it out if you have not. That's the Lizzie Bennet Diaries. Anyway, so we've seen every possible reiteration that we could see. Spin-offs, book spin-offs. I've read sequels, modernized sequels that are fantastic. Like Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. We've read all of it.
Yeah.
So it's safe to say we have a healthy obsession.
Healthy? Meh. What even is healthy?
Yeah.
There's also, one of my other favorite ones is, there's a fan fiction that's really good, where she's a ballet dancer and he's a doctor.
Yes.
I love that one.
I've also read that one, and yes, it is good.
Yeah. There's lots of, we're
There's
big fans.
So much. We are.
But I do think, not to be super on the nose, but my favorite adaptation of it is the 2005 Keira Knightley, Matthew McFadyen movie.
Yes. Yeah. I know. A close second is obviously the BBC series from 1995, I want to say.
That makes sense, because I think it was every 10 years.
Yeah. However, you're not as big a fan of that one because of the awkward...
Yeah, there's too much awkwardness for me. But, it happens.
Yeah.
And Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies is also really good, the movie, as well.
Yeah. I didn't like it as much just because I just don't think they did the movie... I don't think they did it justice in comparison to the book.
Mm.
So I wasn't crazy about it.
I don't love the Darcy in it.
Yeah.
It's my biggest issue.
Yeah.
He's okay, but he's not Matthew McFadyen. He's never been as hot in any other role that he's ever done. And it's just mind-blowing because in Pride and Prejudice, he's the hottest man in the entire world. And then I see him in other movies and I'm like,
but you're
not doing it.
He was in a Musketeer movie, and he was pretty
that's
handsome.
That's a second, I guess. But he's still not as hot as Pride and Prejudice. And I'm like, but
No.
You look the same, but in Pride and Prejudice, he's just so hot.
I wonder if it was who they got. I think it's a science as to how they make actors look attractive in film. And I think a large part of it is who they cast in supporting roles.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You don't want to put anybody in direct competition. So, I feel like they very specifically made, Wickham not handsome. Made Mr.
Cute.
Mr. Collins was, like, obviously grotesque.
Yeah.
And, like, you know, Mr. Bingley was cute, but, like, very baby face and, like, not strapping, like, man, right?
Yeah.
He was very much a boy, even though he was an adult man.
Yeah.
Like,
and he, in real life, him and Rosamund Pike, who plays his love interest in the movie, they're exes. While they're filming this, their chemistry is still fire. Like, if you watch it, but they're exes.
Yikes.
Which is so awkward.
It is awkward. Anyway, so I feel like part of it had to do with who they cast around him. And also, like, the music of that movie was absolutely... I bought the soundtrack. I bought the music to be able to play the soundtrack on my piano. Like,
nice, yeah.
I have the book of music that I can play. It is just the sound. The tracks are amazing. Like, whoever crafted the soundtrack for that movie is, like, genius. So, like, I think that plus lighting plus chemistry, like, it all came together.
And even, like, the scenery, like the opening shot where she's on the hillside and you're like, amazing.
Yes, yeah. The cinematography of that movie is genius.
Yeah.
So, safe to say, we love it.
Yes. Yeah. And also, kind of bringing this up because it is the 2005 version. It is 2025. I think it actually came out in, like, October or September or something. I looked it up and I was like, oh, it's weird that, like, they're re-releasing it in theaters now, but they're actually re-releasing it, at least here, in April. So that's another reason why we're bringing it up, because if you love it as much as we do, check your local theaters to see if they're going to be playing it, because it's playing here April 20th and April 23rd, so we'll be going to one of them.
We will, yes.
For sure. Very excited.
Yeah. Yeah.
We were, I don't know, I was, not that I was too young to see it in theaters. I just wasn't into it when it came out, maybe. Or I don't remember it coming out. Because I feel like it was around the time I read it, because I would have been 15 when it came out. And I definitely read it in high school and fell in love with it then. But, like, I definitely didn't see it in theaters when it came out.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't remember when I read it. It came out the movie came out the year I graduated high school. And I don't remember going to see it in theaters. I very well could have, but I don't really remember it.
Yeah.
But I definitely remember, like, watching it on DVD at my house.
Yeah, I remember watching it at my friend's house and being like,
yeah,
why am I having these feelings?
Yeah. So, we are both very excited.
Yes.
Catherine is just dying with excitement over there as she's so excited she's coughing up a lung.
Yeah. So excited. So yeah, I guess we'll we'll get into it, but just a heads up, this is not a spoiler-free zone. Things might get saucy.
They won't.
They don't.
At all. Does anything get saucy in this book?
Yeah.
It does?
Yeah, there's one scene.
How saucy we talking?
Full
sauce or marginal sauce?
It kind of reminds me of, like,
Divine Rivals level sauce?
Nora Roberts, like, writing.
Oh, like flowery
like, in a
sauce.
way. Like,
it's perfume.
Yeah, it's not like, yeah.
It's not sauce, it's perfume. Because it's flowery and shit.
Yeah. But it's good.
Oh, all right. I still don't know who the love interest is.
After
FYI.
reading this week.
After reading this week, I'm still up. It must be Ravyn.
Like, after this week, I literally texted Katie and I was like, I don't know who she's going to fall in love with because I thought I knew. And then one moment happens, and we've talked about it multiple times, and we'll talk about it when we get to it. But two people, one horse is something that we talked about with from Blood and Ash because they're like on the horse together.
Yes.
And I'm always like, that's a trope. That's a romance trope. So when it happens, I'm like,
yeah,
what is happening?
But are you saying that's a like a misfire? Like, is that a misdirect?
I'm not telling you.
Come on, I hate this.
But it's also three people because the nightmare is still in her head. So it's like, what the fuck is happening? But yeah.
Man.
You know what would be a real left turn if her and Jesper got together?
Yeah, it would.
I'd be here for it.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So, I guess we'll get into it.
You're so excited.
I want to know. It has to be Ravyn. They've set it up to be Ravyn.
Yeah.
And, like, she keeps talking about how whenever he gets close to her, he flushes. So, like, I feel like there's no other option at this point.
Okay. Well, maybe that's the answer then.
But is it?
So okay. Fun.
So, it's week 2. We're reading chapters 10 to 18 this week. So the first thing we get, so at the beginning of each chapter, we get a card and there's something written on it. So for this first bit, what's written on the card is, "Wary I'd grown, so I needed the well. She asked for a chamber, a place she might dwell. To reclaim my good self, I forged the iron gate. The cost was my armor, my golden breastplate. For the scythe I wanted power, and her price was quite steep. I gave her my rest, she claimed all my sleep. The mirror was next, to be invisible, unseen. She wanted old bones, so I gave her my queens. But it felt incomplete, my collection yet whole, and so for the nightmare I bartered my soul." So obviously that is sort of our, like it just, I think it's the Shepherd King. It's his, like, that's him telling us how he got all the cards. Because we know that he got the cards by exchanging things to the Spirit of the Wood. So seems like those were a few of the things he bartered.
Yeah.
Old bones, like his queens. Do you think that she was already dead?
I don't know. Or did she? I assume old.
Old
or
bones.
Is she just? Yeah, or is she just old and it's her bones? But
so
I feel like I hope he didn't kill her. Yeah. What was that one for again? Do you remember? Sorry, you just said it.
It was for the mirror, I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah, she had to be dead because the mirror card, if you use it too long, you see dead.
Right.
I'm making assumptions. I don't want him to be bad. I love him.
So he's obviously the love interest.
No, I just love him. He's my love interest.
I'm gonna look this up.
You're not.
Okay, so moving on. So last week we sort of left off on a cliffhanger of Elspeth sitting with Ravyn and his whole family at this like big dinner party, this big ball for the equinox celebration, and then a bomb gets like dropped. The king announces, or I guess the crown prince announces, that they've collected another card. They're just one away from a complete set. And the reason they have that card is the nightmare card, because Elspeth's uncle traded it to them. In return, the crown prince is going to marry Elspeth's cousin, Ione.
Mhm.
So, Ione has walked on stage. She looks absolutely stunning. And Elspeth she knows that Ione is using maiden card magic because she saw the aura of the maiden card on Ione earlier that day.
And she doesn't look like herself.
And she doesn't look, well, that too, but like,
yeah.
Anyway, so apparently Ione looks like the most beautiful woman that she has ever seen. And she is like just so shocked at this news and at how her cousin looks that she doesn't sit down when everyone else does, and Ravyn has to like pull her down, which is funny.
Yeah.
And he seems annoyed with her because she didn't mention that her uncle had the nightmare card.
Yeah.
So like, he's annoyed that she wasn't transparent, and I'm like, we're gonna find out in a little bit. Dude is also not transparent, so like, not nice.
Yeah, but like, it's kind of what I said last week. Like, how did we know that he wasn't using the same card?
Yeah.
And obviously she thinks that, like, if he has a card, the king would know about it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I don't blame her.
Well, so this is the thing. So Elspeth is thinking the same thing. She's like, why would the king need her uncle's nightmare card if the captain has one? The captain of the Destroyers. Yeah, I want to say destroyer. Like, I want to say destroyer, but destroyer. Anyway, so she's like, why would the king need one if the captain of the destroyers has one? And she's like, oh, the king must not know that he has one. And Nightmare in her head suggests that Ravyn must be a traitor. And Nightmare loves it. He's like, ha! And he wonders if the Prince Elm that we met last week, if he knows about Ravyn's nightmare card, or if Ravyn is deceiving him too.
Yeah.
So, like, he was in that meeting, like, when they tested her.
But he had the card there. So
Yeah.
Elm has to know.
Yeah, but he didn't have it out.
Because she could choose which card she wanted to use.
That's not there, though.
Oh, they haven't done that yet. Sorry.
I'm talking about when Ravyn, like, sat her down and tested her ability.
Oh, yes.
Elm made an appearance.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So she was like, I wonder if he knows about this nightmare card.
Yes. Sorry. I was thinking about the time they test her that is upcoming.
Yes. So Elspeth tells Ravyn that she needs to know what's going on since, like, she's like, dude, what's going on? Like, I don't want to be branded a traitor and a magic user. Like, because she's like, I'm already a magic user, which is bad enough. I don't also want to be branded as a traitor. So she was like, you need to tell me what's going on. Because obviously there are things that he left out.
Yeah.
Ravyn agrees to tell her, but he says not alone because they exist as a council. So he doesn't have the authority to tell her everything. So Nightmare suggests that Ravyn is cunning and wonders if he's seeking Providence cards or trying to take over the throne.
Interesting.
Yes, he wants to know why he wants Providence cards.
Yeah.
Elspeth insists that he tell her everything, and he tries to explain that there are things that he has to do, insinuating that he can't tell her everything, but she just tells him that if he wants her magic, he better call his council and tell her everything, or he doesn't get access to her magic. And I'm like, this seems like an awfully presumptuous conversation to have around a dinner table during a ball.
Yeah.
Like, this seems like it should be done in private, and it's not. Like, they are in the middle of a crowded ballroom.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And, like, even if they're talking quietly, like, it just seems... Yeah. So they leave the table separately, and then meet up in the hall, and he brings her to his room.
Ooh.
Yeah. and he gets his nightmare card. She calls it the second nightmare card, so we know now that it is the second one. It's not the same one.
Yeah, because obviously
the king has the... Because Ione just presented it to him, so...
Yeah. But also, this is, like, such a small detail, but I love that his room is messy.
Yeah.
It was just one of the things that, like, I was reading it, and I was like... He has character, like, it gives him something. It gives it something extra.
Because so many times in books like these, we have, like, the captain of the royal guard, the captain of whatever, like, a military man as a main character, and they are always, like, immaculately neat and tidy. So it's nice to see that his room is a mess.
Yeah. And it makes you think, oh, I guess there's something different here, maybe. Yeah.
Because she even notices it. She's like, oh, his room is a mess. That's interesting. Like, she thought it would be neat and tidy.
Well, yeah, I guess she grew up with her father was the captain of the Destriers. So she's like, he's going to be just like my father.
Yeah. He isn't.
Interesting.
So... he uses the nightmare card to, like, speak into the councils. We don't know who's on the council yet, but speaks into their minds and, like, sort of plans a meeting. So then she starts trying to ask him questions about how his card works, but he's like, it works when you're quiet. Like, I guess he needs to concentrate.
Yeah.
So then I guess she has a chat with Nightmare while she's waiting. And he tells her that, like, he knows about the cards, but, like, he doesn't really explain it to her. Like, I just sort of don't understand, like, she knows that he is whatever he is, and he came from a card, right? Because she touched a card, and now she has him in her head. So, yeah. Like, I don't understand. She's quite, like, not shocked, but he says something about cards, and she's like, what, you know about the cards, and you didn't think to tell me? And it's like, he is a card. Why wouldn't he know about cards? You know what I mean? True. It just seems like she doesn't understand what she has in him, because, like, he reveals some other things as well. And she's just, again, sort of like, what? I can't believe you. And I just sort of want to be like, girl, really?
Yeah.
Like, it just seems very common sense.
Agreed.
But, like, she's just not, maybe she just doesn't have very much of it. I don't know. But Nightmare does suggest that it's, like, super sketch that Ravyn has hid his nightmare card from his uncle this whole time.
Yeah.
And Elspeth tries to defend Ravyn and is like, maybe there's a reason. But Nightmare just says, like, the reason doesn't really matter. And then he says the highwayman meets the hangman one way or another. Essentially suggesting that Ravyn doing something illegal will eventually die.
Yeah.
He'll be punished for his crimes. So,
which is not great for him being a love interest in this book.
Are you trying to throw me off now? Like, I don't... So confused. Okay, so they're about to leave the room and, like, go meet the council in the cellar when a couple of unnamed people, like, are walking down the hall. So they have to be, like, super quiet, and he puts his hand over her mouth. And they overhear these people talking about someone, and we figure out that it's Emery, who is Ravyn's brother and was sort of a dick-ish, but weird, to Elspeth last week. And how his temper has been violent lately.
Right.
And he's difficult to control without a scythe. So that's comforting. Elspeth and Ravyn have, like, a sort of moment where he takes his hand away and he stares at her mouth, and then, like, she sees a flush creep up his neck. So, like, you know, it's a moment. And the guys keep talking about giving Emery sedatives, but they're like, oh, you know, he's manageable with sedatives. And then the other guy's like, but the captain, aka Ravyn, is too protective to actually let me give him the sedatives. But then the other guy is like, don't even talk to the captain about it. Just give him the sedatives. Don't worry about it. And then also says, do not touch Emery because it will unnerve him. And I don't know if they mean unnerve Emery or unnerve the guy that gets touched.
The guy that gets touched for sure, because that's when his magic, he gets all your secrets if he touches you.
Yeah. So it was just an interesting conversation that they overheard, and after they walk away, Elspeth asks, like, who are these guys? And Ravyn tells her that they're physicians. One of them being Orith Willow, and I think his brother Philip was...
He matters less.
He was in the room last week.
Oh, was that his brother?
It's a guy with the last name Willow.
Okay.
But we find out that Orith Willow came to Elspeth's house to test them for infection, but her aunt hid her. So that was what happened in the first few pages when her aunt pushed her out the window and gave her a concussion.
Yeah, Jesus Christ.
So this Orith Willow guy is the guy that tests people for infection.
Yeah.
So Ravyn goes to his wardrobe and pulls the clothes aside, and Elspeth can sense a card back there, but she can't really see which card it is yet. So it seems like barriers don't work well. Like, she can't really sense things past, like, a lot of barriers. So, like, this was hidden behind clothes, behind a piece of wood. And he pulls out another hidden card, and it is the mirror card, which can make you invisible. And, like, Nightmare is just in his glee that this guy has yet another hidden card. And Ravyn offers the mirror card for her to use, because they're about to go creeping through halls.
Yeah.
But she refuses. And Nightmare wants her to explain why, and say, oh, I'm worried I'm gonna absorb it. But she's like, no, because then I'd have to explain the 500-year-old monster in my head.
It is interesting that he's like, tell him about me, and she's like,
no thank you.
Nah, I don't want to.
Yeah.
But, like, he's very much on the side of, like, you should just tell him.
Yeah. Which I don't really get why.
Me neither.
Do you think that, and I'm sure you know, but, like, okay, remember how she's like, oh, my magic, I haven't had any, like, ill effects from it yet?
Yeah.
Do you think, like, is it similar to the card, like, is their magic that they've gotten from the infection similar to card magic in that the more you use it, the more of the cost there is?
Yes.
So, like, if she's only absorbed one card, could it be that she hasn't really suffered ill effects because she hasn't used her magic?
Yes.
Because technically, her seeing the auras of cards and all that, that's not her, that's Nightmare.
Yeah. That is true. These are some good thoughts you're having.
So I'm right.
Well, you could be.
Oh. So she just tells him, like, to explain it away. She's like, I don't use Providence cards because nothing comes for free. And it's a good reason.
Yeah.
So...
especially since she doesn't know what the degeneration she has is.
Yeah.
Like, it's reasonable for her to be afraid of any cards.
Yeah, 100%. So Raven's like, okay, well, I'll use it instead, because I guess he just doesn't want them to be seen, like, creeping through the hallways together.
Yeah.
So he becomes invisible, but she can still feel him, and she can see the aura of the card on his person, so, like, she can still see him.
Which is good.
Yeah. So he leads her where they need to go. On the way, Nightmare's, like, teasing her in her head and laughing, and then, oddly enough, Miriam, her stepmom, shows up.
Of course she does.
She is clearly a bitch. She saw her leave with Ravyn, like, leave the dinner, and suggests that, like, she doesn't care who she fools around with and, like, sullies herself with, as long as it isn't the captain of the destroyers. Because she doesn't want them finding out who Elspeth really is. Just like her mother, strange, fevered, infected. So I guess she's worried that if the captain if Ravyn found out I don't know, if they got close, had a physical relationship, he would find out that she was infected and has magic, and then find out that her dad hid her, and, like, that everybody's been hiding her, and everybody would get in trouble, I guess.
Yeah.
So, Elspeth is just glad. I don't know if they've never had this sort of reckoning conversation before where Miriam, like, fully admits that she hates her guts.
Yeah.
Because, like, Elspeth's like, oh, I'm glad we've gotten over this facade of disdain, like, that she keeps a mask on. Like, it seems like she treats her not well, but, like, civilly. But now that they're alone, without any other potential ears listening, she just lets loose. So Elspeth is like, well, I'm glad that game is over, and she's finally admitting that she essentially hates me. But she's like, she's not gonna get away with dishonoring my mom like that and calling her those straight and not nice things. So she reminds Miriam that even though her mom is gone, and even though her dad kicked her out of their house, he still orders irises to decorate the home. And he won't let Miriam redecorate any of the rooms. So rooms that her mother decorated. And, like, her mom's name was Iris. So, like, you know, she's like, long after you're gone, 2 things will remain. The spindle tree in the courtyard and the white beam tree her dad planted next to it the day her mother died. So essentially insinuating that, like, you're just a placeholder. My dad doesn't love you. He still loves her mom.
Yeah.
And that manages to shut Miriam up and she walks away. Thank God.
Good.
Although, I'm slightly annoyed at all the evil stepmothers. Like, do we need another one?
Yeah. Just seems unnecessary.
Yeah. So, after she's gone, Elspeth asks Ravyn if he's ever met her stepmother. And says that, like, you know, this is her in rare form. And she actually lets a tear fall from her, obviously from her eye. I don't know where else it would fall from. And it goes down her cheek, but Ravyn wipes it away with his invisible hand, because he's still invisible. It was cute. So, they continue down the corridor, and Ravyn tells her that she did well with her stepmother, and asks, like, if she always treats her that way, and Elspeth says that, like, she was emboldened by the fact that they were alone. And Ravyn just warns her that, like, that was unpleasant, but also what we're about to do and where we're about to go and what you're about to hear is also not going to be pleasant. So, like, the unpleasantness is not over.
Yeah.
So they go in, and there are 5 people there. Jesper, who is Ravyn's sister. Elm Rowan, who is not the crown prince, but second prince. Philic Willow, who is a physician. And 2 others that she hasn't met yet. They are Ravyn's parents, Fenrir and Moret. So then we have our next, like, card. It is describing the scythe card, I guess. It says, be wary the red, be wary the blade, be wary the pain, for a price will be paid. Command what you can, death waits for no man. Be wary the pain, for a price will be paid. So, like, I don't get it. I guess command what you can, like, because the scythe makes you, like, command people's emotions, I guess.
Yeah, it's also, it kind of tells us what happens when you use the scythe. Just pain.
Right. The price to be paid is pain.
Yeah.
Right. So she can tell that there are 3 other Providence cards in the room. The scythe, which Elm has. The chalice that Jesper has, and the chalice is the truth, allows you to turn any liquid into a truth-telling serum. And the prophet card, which is what Moret has, and that lets you see the future. So Ravyn introduces her, and they all sit, and we learn that Moret is actually the king's sister. So that's how they're related to the king. So they tell her that she needs to submit to the forum for answers. So they offer 3 cards for her to choose from to be affected by, so that they know that she is being honest. So she could have either the scythe, the nightmare, or the chalice. So they're like, you're gonna have to be under the effects of one of these. Which one are you gonna pick? And essentially it's like initiation, I feel like.
Yeah, make sure she's not gonna tell all their lies.
Yeah.
I guess.
So Nightmare tells her to, like, trust it/him. And choose the scythe. So she says, okay, I'll choose the scythe. So Elm turns it on and explains that, like, the scythe card doesn't force anything. It just affects emotions. So, like, she's just gonna want to tell them everything. Like, it's not gonna force her to speak. She's just gonna want to tell them. And says that, like, she may feel a bit strange, but she will want to do what they ask her to do. So he turns it on to her, and she feels this, like, euphoric joy and feels light and, like, lets go of the tension she's had for years and years and years about, like, being discovered, and, like, she just feels so happy. But Ravyn does not seem happy that she is under the influence of this card.
Yeah.
And then she has this overwhelming need to slap herself. So she does. 3 separate times. And, like, you can tell that it's actually weird because he's saying, oh, you're gonna want to do this. And, like, she does want to, but then as soon as she does it, she's like, oh, this guy's an asshole.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, her consciousness is still there of, like, he's making me do this. So, like, she hates that. So Elm just says, like, he's doing it to make sure she is under his control. But Ravyn is pissed. He's like, after the second time, Ravyn was like, no, that's enough. And then he still does it one more time. So, like,
yeah,
Ravyn is just pissed that, like, he did it so many times. So Nightmare just tells her, like, don't be controlled so easily.
Thanks, dude.
And I think he did that after, like, the first time she got slapped, and then she slaps herself twice more. And then afterwards he's like, let Elm think that he's in control. And Elspeth, like, he is in control. Like, I don't have to let him think he is. He is.
Yeah.
So Fenrir, who is Ravyn's dad, asks Elspeth to tell them about her. And she just reveals she was born at Spindle House and was there until she was 9. Then her dad sent her to live with her aunt and uncle. And then she tells them that while her dad felt she was a danger to her stepmom and sisters, he didn't want her to die. So that's why he cast her out, we'll say.
Yeah.
She also tells them that her dad gives her uncle money to keep her, and that her uncle has had the Nightmare card for 11 years, but she has no idea how he got it or why he held on to it for so long. But Moret, Ravyn's mom, understands that he kept it until he would get the greatest amount for it. And, like, essentially, that's true now, because now his bloodline is going to inherit the throne. Because Ione is going to get with Hoth. And they're going to have babies.
Yeah, so we assume, he's just saying, I waited until Ione was old enough to...
essentially, to be...
sell her off.
Yeah. Amazing.
Good dad.
Yeah. And, like, we don't really know a lot about him. And Elspeth doesn't really either, because she's like, yeah, I lived with him, but, like, mostly she kept with her cousin and her aunt and, like, didn't really interact with her uncle all that much. And her uncle is her uncle, like, obviously it's her uncle, but he's not related to her. It's her aunt and her mom were sisters. So, like, her dad and her uncle are not related at all. They're brothers-in-laws, I guess. But, like...
Yeah.
So, she's just sort of not super close with him. They ask if she trusts them. Like, the people here. Like, does she trust Jesper and Elm and all that? And she doesn't know. She's like, I just met you.
Completely fair.
Yeah. And then Elm asks if she trusts Ravyn, since they seem close. Yet another reason why he is obviously the love interest. But she doesn't. So she just says, not really. Like, you know what I mean? She's honest. Then Elm asks if she thinks he's handsome. And of course she says yes. But then she's like, I need to add on a qualifier so that he doesn't think I'm interested. So she says, for a destrier.
Love it.
Yeah. Which is, oh my god, so embarrassing. Can you imagine having to admit, like, that someone's handsome that you just met? Ugh.
I hate it.
I also hate it.
But I like that she added on the qualifier. I was like, good job.
Yeah. So they ask then if her magic is only seeing Providence cards, or is it other stuff too? And she's stressed out because she wants to answer because of the scythe card, but, like, she doesn't want to reveal that she can absorb magic from the cards. They also ask if she's been trained in combat since she threw Elm across the road when the Highwaymen attacked her.
Yeah.
But that was obviously Nightmare's strength. Nightmare jumps in and says, like, he can help. Because the Nightmare cards the cards have no effect on him. So he's like, let me help. So he...
right now.
Yeah,
like...
I know. So this is the thing. This is sort of the other thing that he has kept secret from her. The fact that he is not affected by cards at all. So she realistically never has to be under the influence of a card. Ever.
Yeah.
So he, inside her brain, destroys the card's influence so she can answer how she wants. What I don't understand is if Elm had to have her slap herself 3 times to make sure that the bond was strong, wouldn't he feel it being shredded?
I think he did it because he figured if she wasn't controlled by it, she wouldn't do it. So, like, I don't think he'd notice if it wasn't working. But I don't know.
So, I guess he destroys the card's influence so she can answer how she wants. She tells them that nobody trained her, like, in combat, that she's been trying to survive, no one else knows about her magic, and that she's been trying to be cautious, not risky. So she just explains it away. And they are okay with those answers. They're like, yeah, this seems legit. So they are like, okay, we're prepared to give you some answers. So they ask her to swear that what they tell her doesn't leave the room. And she's like, yeah, okay. And she's like, I'm not under the influence of the card, so I could lie and say yes and then just go ahead and tell whoever I want. But she does say that she is going to keep her promise.
Yeah.
So they tell her that they are trying to collect the full deck of cards. And, like, we could have sort of figured that out, right? Like, we sort of already knew that.
What else would they be doing?
Yeah. So she's like, are you planning to rebel and overthrow the king? Like, what's the plan here? And they're like, no, of course not. And they say that the king needs 2 things to destroy the mist and, like, the curse in Blunder. A full deck of cards and infected blood. And they plan to use Emery as the blood. And essentially the U's want to stage a rescue. And in my brain, I'm like, they're gonna offer her up instead. Or they're gonna, like, use her blood instead. She's gonna help them collect the cards. They're gonna use her blood and kill her to save Emery. Because there's no way that they're gonna care about her in comparison with their own flesh and blood.
Child. Yeah, and I think she even thinks that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But she does ask and say, who would you use instead? Thinking it's gonna be her. But obviously they wouldn't.
It's gonna be me. Sorry.
So they say someone close to the king who has done great wrong. So, like,
Who could that be?
Yeah. So, like, they just talk about how, like, if they break the curse, it would be essentially a cure to all those who've been infected. So, like, even though Emery is going a bit crazy right now, if they find all the cards and if they destroy the mist, they also destroy the curse, which means he would be healed.
Which is why it's like, I guess I understand why the king is like, I'll use him because he's
dying
suffering.
Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, but it's also like, yeah, but if you were to get rid of it, he would be fine.
Yeah.
If you use somebody else's blood, he would also be fine. So maybe, like, instead of killing all of these other people, just save a few of them so that you can use one of the random people that you're, like, taking and killing.
Yeah.
Which I know also isn't great. I get it. It's not.
No, it's not ideal. But better than your own, like, family.
Yeah. I don't know.
So, obviously, Elspeth wants a cure, too, because she would like Nightmare out of her head. But she feels the magic in her veins and how powerful it is. And she knows that she could use it to cure Blunder, so she agrees to help them. And they tell her that they only need the well, the Iron Gate, and the Twin Alders card. And, like, everybody needs the Twin Alders card. It's going to be a race to who gets it first.
Yeah.
So, next, we get the Prophet card. That's the next card that we hear about. So it says, be wary the gray, be wary the sight, be wary of visions that come in the night. You'll lose all your power, you'll weep, plea, and cower. Be wary of visions that come in the night. So, that's interesting.
Yeah, I think they said, in your part earlier, it said that, like, you can see the future, but you can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
So I guess, like, this makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, even if you'll weep, plea, and cower, but you won't be able to change anything.
Correct. So,
sucks.
Yeah. So she goes to, like, wait outside the cellar as they discuss, like, what they're gonna do with her, and I'm like, you already told her your plan. Like, I don't really know what there is left to decide.
Yeah. Like, she's gonna help you now, so...
Yeah, and, like,
what?
She's already agreed to help.
Yeah.
And they've already told her their secrets. So, like, I don't understand why they need to have this, like, conference. But they do.
Yeah.
Because they're in there for, like, a whole hour. Mm-hmm. So she's annoyed at Nightmare for not telling her that the Scythe card doesn't work on him. And he's like, none of the cards work on me. And he has just a ton of secrets, but she's just, like, exhausted and doesn't want to have to figure them out right now.
But we already have heard of somebody that the cards don't work on.
Yes. So she wants to listen in as to what they're talking about. So she's like, I'm gonna, and, like, presses her ear to the door. So they're discussing how to get her to U Castle so that they can work in peace and, like, talk freely and you know, just not be under constant scrutiny. So obviously they'll need a reason for her to go stay at U Castle for both the Hawthorns and Eric Spindle, her dad.
Yeah.
Elm does not trust her. And he says her words are too practiced. But Jesper sort of, like, picks up for her and says that, like, she has spent so long deceiving everyone and avoiding detection, like, that's why her words are rehearsed. And, like, valid point.
Yeah, of course.
Philic then drops the bomb that she is supposed to be there because Moret saw her in a vision. And Moret's like, well, you know, I saw a cloaked figure that walked into the woods, trailed by 13 Providence cards. But there's only 12 Providence cards, so what's going on? Why is there a 13th card? And behind her, Emery is alive and well, which is why she told Ravyn and Elm to watch the forest road. So, like, that night they came upon her as highwaymen and put a dagger to her.
Yeah.
They were waiting for her and wanted her to join their cause. I don't really understand why then they tried to rob her.
Well, I guess they didn't know what it meant. Maybe they thought that she had 12 cards, which is impossible, but I don't know.
I don't know either.
They're like, we can steal the cards from her. Like, that's stupid.
Yeah.
Obviously, like, that's not going to be the answer.
Yeah. Anyway, sort of don't really... I'm hoping we learn more about this. Maybe.
Well, I think the prophet card just meant that they needed her for finding the cards.
Yeah.
But they just assumed they should attack her because they're idiots.
Dummies.
Because they're destriers.
Yeah. So Elspeth realizes that, like, they were waiting for her the whole time and that she was embedded in this prophecy. And they keep talking about how they're going to get her to their castle, and Jesper has an idea. And we all know what it's going to be. Obviously.
I love it. I'm here for it.
Yeah. Obviously, they invite her with the premise that Ravyn is courting her and wants to get to know her better. So she's going to go stay at their castle.
Amazing.
Yeah. And, like, he hates the idea.
Of course he does.
He doesn't take a lot of convincing, but they do convince him. And he does, like, protest a lot, but, like, he's like, oh, fine. And you can tell he's not happy about it, but, like, again, it does not take long for him to get on board.
Agreed. Yeah.
And Elspeth is actually, like, slightly offended because they're like, oh, she's beautiful and clever, and he's like, oh. So she's like, what's wrong with me? Why doesn't he want to pretend to court me?
Yeah.
So they actually decide to, like, get the ball going immediately, and it's not like she's gonna go back home and wait a week and then show up at their door. No. They want to ask if she can accompany them home tonight.
Wild.
It is wild. So, like, Fenrir and Moret are like, we're gonna go talk to her uncle and dad tonight, and she's gonna come with us tonight. But
it's all happening very fast.
Yes. And then they're like, we have to show our faces at Equinox first for a little while.
And also make this seem realistic, because they've barely been seen together.
Yeah. So Ravyn comes out then and finds that she was listening at the door, which was...
She, like, falls on her ass.
Oh my god,
it's hilarious.
so embarrassing. And
but, like, she had to know he was coming, just move out of the way.
So he asks if the plan is to her satisfaction. And she just says, ugh, it's fine. And Ravyn then asks about that Alex guy, like, what about him? What's he gonna think? And he's like, you know, since he's in love with you. But Elspeth is like, I haven't promised him anything. It's fine. Like, I'm not in love with him. And Ravyn just reminds her that this is going to be dangerous. But he can protect her. Yeah. So again, it's another sort of notch in the Ravyn must be the love interest belt.
Well, and then also there being, like, a fake betrothal situation.
Yeah.
Like, it'd be weird if she ended up with somebody else.
So are you acknowledging that?
No, I'm just saying words.
So she is worried about the king finding out that she's infected. And
Of course.
I don't really understand Raven's argument here, because he's like, oh, you'll just be in the same situation as you were this morning, but with more powerful allies. And I'm like, she wasn't discovered by the king this morning. She was discovered by you. Like,
Yeah.
I don't understand how it's in any way the same. Like, this morning she was undiscovered. Nobody knew her secret, not even her family. So, like, that is a completely different situation than now, when, like, 6 people know that she is magic.
Yeah.
So, I didn't understand that argument at all.
No. He's just like, yeah, it's stupid.
It is stupid, thank you. So...
But it works.
Yeah, it does. She's like, oh, fair enough. So she asks what will happen if she wanted to go home, back to her aunt's, and Ravyn just tells her, like, you're not a prisoner. If you want to go home, go home. So,
okay.
wow.
Cool.
So then she asks Nightmare if he will help her through this, and he thinks she's, like, giving him a free hand or something, but she's like, I want to find all the cards to get rid of you in my head with the cure. So then she just asks, like, when are we getting started? And he just tells her, like, right now. And I'm like, she already knew that. She heard them say that. Why is she asking him?
I got nothing.
Anyway, they leave this wherever they are, and they're gonna go back to the party. However, Ravyn decides to take her to see Emery first. So she asks why the king is sacrificing Emery, and Ravyn tells her it's because he's dying and the king thinks that this is a mercy killing.
Again, though.
Yeah, I know. Like, he could...
It's so stupid.
It is. So, and he says that the king realistically could have sent him to the physicians or to his death when he was first infected, but he kept him alive. So, like, he bent the rules for him. And Elspeth just points out he wouldn't have to lie to the king if the king stopped killing infected people and just let them live.
You know?
Yeah, like, valid point. But, Ravyn just explains that the king is bound by his Rowan lineage, so all infected by magic must die.
Good.
Yeah. Which I don't really understand. He's the king. He should be able to control the laws if he wants to.
Yeah.
But he also says, like, P.S., we're on a time crunch. We have to, in order for us to save Emery, we have to collect the deck by winter solstice. So right now it's the equinox. I'm assuming it's the autumnal one.
Yeah, sure.
So the autumnal equinox is September 21st. I think. September-ish, like it's the autumn one, and then there's the winter. So they have 4 months, is my assumption.
Yeah, makes sense.
So essentially, Emery's magic flares at the shift of seasons. And the Book of Alders says that the cards should be joined at the darkest part of the year. So they essentially have to join the cards in winter. And Ravyn is concerned that Emery won't survive another full year. So that's why they have until the winter solstice. Because that's when they have to join the cards. And Emery's not going to make it a year and 4 months. He's not going to make it till the very next winter solstice. So they approach a door that has 2 guards on it, but they let Ravyn walk on through. However, when they walk in the room to see Emery, he is gone.
Which is like, what are these guards doing?
I don't know. They're not very useful. So we get our next, I guess, info card. So it says, degeneration falls like leaves from a branch, swift or slow and steady. The infection grants great magic. Degeneration is the cost of such a gift. For many, the payment is their own sanity. For others, their lives. Degeneration falls like leaves from a branch. So essentially, everybody's degeneration is different. It can be very fast. It can be very slow. It can be very gradual. But essentially it takes either your mind or your life.
Yeah.
So, Ravyn uses his nightmare card to tell his family that Emery is missing. So they all go in search of him. So they head towards the crowd of people that have moved out into the gardens after dinner to look for Emery, but before they get to the crowd, the king actually finds them and stops them to talk.
Okay.
Yeah. And Ravyn, introduces Elspeth to the king, and he makes assumptions with his eyes about the two of them. Just the way he's staring. He's like, oh.
Which is what they kind of want.
Yeah, it is what they want, 100%.
But if I were her, I wouldn't want the king to see me, period.
No. No, especially where you've been, hiding your infection. Yeah. But so the king leaves, and Elspeth feels like Ravyn is really uncomfortable when the king gave them eyes. I guess the fact that the king is now making assumptions about the two of them together is making Ravyn really uncomfortable. And she's just like, what is his deal? Does he hate me, or does he just really not want people to think that we're courting? What is it that bothers him about this? And yeah. I'm like, how are you so invested in this already? Why are you so, why do you care so much how he feels?
It really reminds me of, to bring it back to our pre-conversation, of Elizabeth in Pride and Prejudice, when she was like, he said I wasn't pretty.
Yeah.
Which I kind of love.
I guess. So they walk through the crowd and spot Emery. Ravyn sort of goes in his direction, but Elspeth gets, taken up by the crowd and knocked down, and it's very, damsel in distress. Elm actually helps her up.
Ooh.
Why are you doing this to me? You're doing it on purpose.
Yes, I am.
And she is, not nice to him, and I'm like, a thank you would suffice. He's helping you up, even though he doesn't trust you.
I know, but he also made her slap herself in the face 3 times.
Yes.
Enemies to lovers, ?
I hate it. But then he just uses his scythe card to encourage everyone to part so they can get out of the crowd. And towards Emery. And they see that he is there arguing with 2 guys. And the 2 guys have White Eagle cards, which gives you courage. So these guys are just assholes, essentially. The card is giving them asshole status.
Yeah.
So one of the guys just punches Emery in the nose. And then hauls him back up off the ground. And is gonna make it worse when a black sleeve reaches around the guy's throat. So, Ravyn has snuck up behind him and, arrived. And he's essentially leave him alone. Get out of here. And the guy says that Emery picked his pocket. And he's like, well, too bad. Just get out of here. And he's like, no, I'm not leaving without my money. So he swings at Ravyn and a brawl ensues. Elspeth and Elm are just standing by, and she's like, are you gonna help him? But he's like, nah, it's been a long day, let's let Ravyn have a little bit of fun. So 2 guys ain't nothing for him. So
fair.
Emery climbs a tree, because what else are you gonna do when your brother is getting into a fight with 2 guys for you? Climb a tree. And then he drops the coins. And Elspeth sort of realizes why he seems odd and thinks oh, the degeneration is actually eating him alive little by little.
Yeah.
So she asks Elm what magic he has. And Elm just tells her that all it takes is one touch, and Emery can read everyone's secrets as if they're written in a book. And he has touched her, so he does know all of her secrets. But over the last 2 years, he's grown weak and violent, and it's always worse on the equinoxes and the solstices. And Elm tells her that Emery spoke about her, a girl with black eyes and dark magic. And he was excited because he's never met someone else infected before. Other than his brother, that is.
What?
So that's sort of our first, big bombshell the fact...
The fuck?
Yeah. Elspeth is, like, super shocked to hear that Ravyn is also infected. And asks Nightmare if he knew. And he's like, I have my suspicions.
Like, bitch, what?
It's like, and you didn't tell me? But again, it's just furthering that narrative that, like, Nightmare has his own secrets. That he doesn't tell her.
Which is shitty.
Yeah. And I'm like, why? Just tell her. Why do you need to keep secrets from her? Is she your one true love?
There's so many love interests. I love it so much.
So she watches the captain fight, and obviously he's vicious and brutal, and, like, eventually the men stay down and surrender their White Eagle cards to him, because I guess that's what happens. And the second the cards touch his palm, the white auras that Elspeth sees around them disappears, which we've sort of seen before. The auras temporarily disappearing on his person. So this is his magic. But we don't know what that means yet.
Yeah. So the next chapter is a long one. So it's, for the last Providence card, I wanted her close to answer my call when I needed her most. But she guarded her secrets like a dragon its gold, saying nothing of price our bargain would hold. But long had I suffered and long had I bled. I'll pay any cost for a 12th card, I said. The salt stung my nose, and her spite filled the air. I woke in the chamber, the twin alders card there. And so, my dear kingdom, my blunder, my land, the cards fall to you, paid by my hand. For her price it was final, our bartering done. I created 12 cards, but I could not use one. And I know I said it earlier, but I don't know if we actually knew that the Shepherd King couldn't use the cards, or if this is the first time we get it. I'm not sure. But I did mention it earlier because the Nightmare Kings can't use the cards. And neither can the Shepherd King. Interesting.
But he's just saying he could not use one card. The Nightmare says none of them affect him.
No, he's saying he can't use any of them.
Oh, so
like,
then...
he can't even use one of them.
Oh, so obviously Nightmare is the Shepherd King.
It's a bit more than that.
Is it his soul? Because he says in order to make the Nightmare card, he had to sacrifice his soul. So is it just a piece of his soul that's in the Nightmare card? Oh, stop. Stop shrugging.
The shrug.
Stop.
Le shrug.
Stop with the le shrug.
Le shrug? Who's the love interest? Le shrug. Who's the nightmare? Le shrug.
I don't like this.
Okay.
I don't like this.
So she goes over to see Ravyn and is just pissed. And she just says, I know what you are. And he's like, do you? And Emery asks who the pretty lady is. So what, like, he met her 2 days ago. You'd think he'd remember her, but clearly this is part of his degeneration. Because he asks who she is, and he thinks that she could be a tree spirit, a king, or a villain. I'm like, interesting. Why does he think she could be a king?
I don't know.
Ravyn basically just shuts him up, and Elm comes to get him, and obviously has his Psy card, and says they have things to, and I guess Ravyn says that they have things to discuss. Emery, like, falls out of the tree, and Ravyn tells her to come with him, and she tells him she's growing tired of his lies by omission, and she's, like, super pissed. And I think part of it is mostly because, like, he's living so publicly, and he's the captain of the Destriers, and she's like, but you're infected, and you're part of the problem. You're one of the people that's, like, hunting us down.
Yeah.
So she's pissed at him for that.
A valid point.
It is, but it's also, like, she's pissed at him for lying, and, like, this does come up in a bit, but she's pissed at him for lying from a mission, and she's also doing the same thing to him. So she asks him flat out if he's infected, and obviously he is. And the king actually knows about it. And he then says that she'd be surprised by the counsel his uncle keeps. So we're led to believe that there's like more people that are infected than just Emery and Ravyn. Interesting.
Yeah. And we find out about another one shortly.
This week.
Yeah.
But she says that she understands the cards fading now, because last week when he tested her with the cards, sometimes when he touched them, she was like, it's dark and then it's colorful. It's weird.
Yeah.
So he shows her the 2 white eagle cards he has in his hand, and they're not glowing. But then he like tips his hand over and they drop, and the color comes back immediately. And the nightmare actually understands first. And he says there's 12 black cards, but there's 13 destriers. So he says, like, he can't use the black horse. So that's why they, like, got a 13th, because, like, he doesn't need the card, because he can't use it. So she kind of says that, like, he can't use the card, and he agrees. And he also says they can't be used on him, which is super cool and interesting. And he tells her he can only use the mirror and the nightmare. And then he says, and maybe the twin alders, because obviously nobody knows.
But we don't know that. Like, I don't like that they're like,
yeah,
oh,
that's
maybe.
Yeah. So I guess all the other cards can't be used on him, but the nightmare could still technically be used on him. And the other ones, like, we don't know what the twin alders... Well, we know that it was used to talk to the spirit of the wood, so whatever that means. So they hear, like, partygoers are everywhere, and he's just like, this is not the time or the place for this. But she thinks he's just trying to avoid the conversation, so she follows him to force him to talk more. But then Dimia calls out to her, and she and Naya come over, which are her stepsister twins. And Ravyn tells her to take his hand because they're courting. And Dimia and Naya are like super surprised that they're holding hands. And Ravyn's just like, we're going dancing now, and like kind of brushes them off. So they walk away and they do dance, and people watch them, and she asks why they're dancing. And he says, trust me, pretending is half the work. And she says that she doesn't trust him because he isn't forthright. And this whole time I was like, bitch, you're lying too. And she does get into it, which I appreciate, but I was kind of like, you can't be this mad at him for lying when you're doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Hypocrisy, which, like, everyone has it.
I guess.
Still not great. He slides his hand up her spine, and
Woo?
He whispers to her, and it's like kind of a like sexy moment, but he just whispers that like an admission of treason is forthright for one day, and she just glares at him and like stomps away from him, and I'm like, yeah, he's not wrong. So she ends up seeing Emery and Elm again, and they're just having a drink break on their way to bring Emery back. And Elm says that Ravyn and Elspeth have clearly made up. And then Emery says, the nightmare be wary, the dark be wary, the fright be wary, the voice that comes in the night. She thinks he knows all of her secrets. No, he didn't say that. She thinks in her head, like, Emery knows all of her secrets because he touched her.
Yeah.
But then he just vomits blood, and we're like, oh, this is not great.
Sin.
And the nightmare says, shame, I was just beginning to like him. Which is just so... I love the nightmare, but I'm also like, oh, what a sin.
Yeah. Poor kid.
Right? He's just a baby. So then we get another chapter card. The ties of Blunder are strong, family magic kingdom. They hold us together, guiding us like the sisal ropes we leave in the mist to find our way home. One is blood, the other salt, and the last stone. Keep all three and do not let go. The ties of blunder are strong.
Yikes.
Yeah. So I don't know. It means something, I'm sure.
Yeah.
It's less obvious, this one, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just like, cool. So the next scene, she's just on her way to the U's, and she thinks like leaving her aunt was hard, and she didn't actually even see Ione, and she thinks like she couldn't lie to her about the betrothal, and Emery cried and coughed up blood when he remembered why he couldn't go with them. So like clearly he has like a memory thing on the go too. And Elm said that he would stay with him since the scythe is the only thing to help him sleep. On the drive, she reaches out for the nightmare in her head for comfort, and he's like curled up like a cat in her head and just like not really responsive, I guess. Jesper and her parents are on one bench, so she's sitting next to Ravyn, and she thinks like how annoyed she is. But she also can't forget, like, holding his hand when they were dancing. Which is cute. They get to Castle U, and she thinks of her aunt telling her it was haunted. And the steward, John Thistle, lets them in and offers to take Elspeth to her room. But Ravyn is like, no, I'll do it. Okay. And for like a moment while they're going, the nightmare's eyes flare to help her see in the dark, which is super interesting. So Ravyn brings her to her room, but then he stands at the door and says that he didn't intend to be on feeling, and he's had to pretend for so long he forgot how to talk about being infected, I guess. And he asks if she can understand. And she just thinks like she can, because she hasn't told him about absorbing the cards or the nightmare in her head, and that he's the one that can see the cards, not her. And she thinks this is why it's so easy to hate him, because she can't admit to hating herself, because she's keeping secrets. Which, like, I appreciate that she realizes that she's being hypocritical. That's the word I'm thinking of? And then she tells him then that the house is far from prying eyes, so there's no need for him to pretend to court her, because she says it's abhorrent to him, and she says they don't need to pretend to be anything they aren't, and he asks what they are. And she says nothing. And she says, isn't that what you wanted? And she, like, sees him react, but he doesn't actually say anything. And then she thinks, like, trying to hurt him, she just ended up hurting her own feelings, which is just so classic.
Yeah.
And then she just says, that's what I thought, and slams the door in his face. She dreams that night, but she immediately forgets it. And, like, when she sits up in bed after waking up, she's still in her equinox dress, but she knows it's daytime. But it is dark, so she asks the nightmare for some help. And he, like, changes her eyes so she can see in the dark. And she looks around a bit in this room, and the carpet has, like, a gilded knight on a black horse. And I'm immediately like, it's the Shepherd King.
Yeah.
On the carpet. Jesper knocks and then comes in and just comments on her sitting in the dark. And she's like, I just woke up. And she brings in her trunk of clothes. And Elspeth asks Jesper, like, who the knight is, and she says that he's the Shepherd King. And we get that the U's actually collect, like, histories and stuff from the Shepherd King, so they're, like, into it for some reason. And she thinks it's like her dream, and the nightmare in her head is silent. Interesting. Then Jesper gives her a letter from her aunt, and her aunt basically just saying, like, she's feeling lonely with Elspeth gone, and Ione and her uncle actually stayed at Stone, because obviously they're trying to figure out this betrothal thing. Mm-hmm. And her aunt kind of wishes that they didn't go to Equinox, but she says that Elspeth also deserves a change of scenery, but to be careful because Castle U has a lot of old magic. And then she ends the letter with like a blunder motto: be wary, be clever, be good. And Elspeth thinks that she's worried for her, but the nightmare says that like it was the right thing to do. Okay, cool. Jesper then asks if it's bad news, but she says no, it's just a letter from her aunt, and that like everything is changing, and she's worried about Ione and about her aunt and about getting caught. And Jesper says she worries too about like being caught and about Emery and Elm, and she tells herself that she's stronger than her doubts. Though, like, and even if it doesn't feel like that, I guess it's kind of like her motto kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which is nice. And then Jesper kind of like does a double take and says that the light made Elspeth's eyes look yellow for a second. Elspeth's like, oh, how weird. That can't be real.
Yeah.
Right.
Uh...
And then Jesper says that Sylvia Pine and her daughters are coming for tea. And the nightmare says, tea with Blunder's bottom feeders is torture. And Jesper kind of just tells her that they want to confirm that the Pine family has an Iron Gate, because it's one of the cards that they still need. So, they're going into scheming.
I love it. I just love how easy this is for her, too.
I know. It works out so well.
It's so easy.
So then we get another chapter header, and we get Providence cards are a gift. Their magic is measured. Neither they nor those who wield them risk degeneration. Still, be wary, be clever, be good. Nothing comes for free, especially magic. Providence cards are a gift. So, like, using the Providence cards, though, there are side effects.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess they don't kill you, because it says that using them, neither they nor those who wield them risk degeneration. So, like, I guess it's just temporary what they feel, and it'll, like, as soon as they stop using the card, they'll go back to themselves.
Really?
I guess so, because why else would it say that? It kind of surprised me, because I was like, that doesn't seem right. But it must be. Anyway. Moret, Jesper, and Elspeth wait for the Pines, and Jesper and Elspeth both have, like, a drink, and Moret is, like, semi-scandalized about it because it's, like, before noon, but the nightmare is like, yes, you need to do this to put me out of my misery.
Yeah. I love it.
Me too. We also get that Ravyn has already gone back to Stone, so, like, he's not going to be joining them, which Elspeth has no feelings about. So the four Pines show up, the mother and three daughters, and Elspeth is sitting next to.
I don't understand how they're putting up this ruse that Ravyn is courting her if he's not even there.
He's still got a job, I guess. I don't know. She's got to be friends with the family. It doesn't matter if she actually likes him. Yeah. It's well, everyone believes it, though. It's like, everyone loves a bit of gossip.
I guess.
So Elspeth is sitting next to Gerda and the mother, and at first it's a bit awkward, but then Moret asks how they enjoyed Equinox, and the girls just all start talking over each other. And Gerda tells Elspeth all about her different dresses, and the nightmare is just like, just ask her where the card is, because he doesn't want to be there. He's hating this so much. And I just love him. I love him so much. But obviously, Elspeth knows that would be way too suspicious. She can't just be like, do you have an Iron Gate card?
Yeah. Although,
but
it's weird, though, because, like, they use the cards as, like, currency in trading, and yet, like, it's all, oh, you know, be careful what you've got. Like, don't tell people what you have. It's just weird. That, like, they pass
Yeah.
them around to each other and trade them back and forth, and yet they can't tell people what they have.
Yeah. So Gerda then brings up Ione, and she says she doesn't remember her being so stunning. And I'm like, are you dumb? But Elspeth wonders then if this is what the U's plan was all along, because they knew that, like, someone would bring up the cards and bring up her cousin and bring up the maiden card. And she's kind of a bit pissed about it. But Elspeth just says that in the trade for the nightmare and in her betrothal, she was given a maiden card.
Which, like, was she allowed to tell them that?
It feels weird, but it also felt weird when she told her stepsisters that she had a maiden card too. I was like, why are you telling everybody this? But also, anybody that's ever seen Ione, you'd think it would just be obvious.
Yeah.
But apparently it's not. Gerda asks then if her father offered the captain of the guard a card for her dowry, and Elspeth just says she's not betrothed to anyone, especially not Ravyn.
Which, again, like not great for the ruse.
No. But she goes on to say that her father was given a card for her mother's dowry, so someday it'll be hers. And then she asks if their father has any dowry cards for them. And Gerda just says, like, in theory, but her father's too fond of them, and he's always carrying them around. And Elspeth is just like, oh, are his cards rare? And Gerda's like, no, he just has a prophet and an iron gate. And she's like, shit, we got all the information. Perfect. So
it was
the women
so
leave,
easy.
and then
it was like too easy.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, exactly. So then they go up to tell Fenrir that Waylon Pine has an Iron Gate card, and he has it on his person right now. And he's actually set to travel home from Stone tomorrow. So they send Jesper to let Ravyn and Elm know. And they're like, are we going to do anything about it? Are we going to get them to try and steal it? But they basically decide that they'll steal it on his way home. So Elspeth asks Fenrir if they hurt people when they steal the cards. And he basically says, with, like, her help, they'll be able to locate cards and they can avoid violence.
So, like, yes, they do hurt people, but hopefully with her, not anymore.
Yeah, it's like, that's not a great answer, but okay. And then Fenrir takes out his old Book of Alders, and it has, like, a black and white tree on the front, and it's very old. It's older than her copy. And he goes to the last page, and he reads, "The 12 call for each other when the shadows grow long, when the days are cut short and the spirit is strong. They call for the deck, and the deck calls them back. Unite us, they say, and we'll cast out the black. At the king's namesake tree, with the black blood of salt, all 12 shall together bring sickness to halt. They'll lighten the mist from the mountain to sea, new beginnings, new ends, but nothing comes free."
They really like saying this whole nothing comes free thing.
Yeah. And Moret says that, like, nobody can find the Twin Alders card, and Elspeth asks if the king knows where to look, and we get that he's, like, been looking over a map and, like, marking off all the places that he searched, but he still has no luck. And the card is actually only mentioned in the Old Book of Alders and the history of Brutus Rowan, the first Rowan king. And the nightmare hisses when he hears that. You're like, of course. And she asks what the history book says, and Moret just says it says the same thing, that the Shepherd King took the Twin Alders cards into the mist. Like, that's all they really know. So Elspeth asks if there's any, like, books about the history of the Shepherd King, But we get that, like, any books were destroyed and all of his children died. So, like, his line ended.
Yeah.
So then his captain of the guard actually became the king. And that's, Rowan was the captain of his guard. So now there's a Rowan
Now that's why there's
line,
a Rowan thing, yeah.
Yeah. So then she asks whose blood they plan to use to unite the deck. And he tells her that they're going to use Orith Willows, who is the head of the king's physicians. And he tells her that Orith's magic allows him to see other infected people. And, like, apparently he wears, like, a metal claw thing on his hand so that he can, like, test people's blood.
But it just...
And he's been hunting...
It just sounds like he has to, like... It also just sort of sounds like science. Because it's like, oh, he can sense infection, but he has to test their blood, and it just makes me think that, like, he has to bring it back to a lab to test it.
Yeah, I think it's more instantaneous, though. Like, I don't think he actually... But it is interesting. But he's, like... He's the main person that's been hunting down infected people, and he's infected himself, and she's like, what the fuck? So this is, like, a revelation.
Yeah.
And then John Thistle brings in a bag with their cards, and she's just like, they're not all here. And they say, like, the black horse is with the destriers, so, like, Jesper has one, and Ravyn has the mirror and the nightmare, and Elm has the scythe. But other than those, they're only missing 3. They're missing the well, the iron gate, and the twin altars. And she asks if they have a plan for the well. And they're just like, no, because most men who would have a well card are pretty shady. And she just says that she knows someone who has a well card, and he just lives down the street.
It's her daddy.
It is her daddy. Now we get a card about the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
Be wary the violet, be wary the dread, be wary the glass and the world of the dead. You'll fast disappear, you'll tremble in fear. Be wary the glass and the world of the dead. So,
the mirror?
You see dead people.
Mm-hmm.
If you look in the mirror, you'll see dead people.
Can I just say, my only hesitation with this book right now so far is the all-overness of these like chapter cards. Like, just the way that they're all over the place, you know what I mean? Like, sometimes they're explaining a card and, like, the weaknesses that are associated with it. Sometimes they're talking about something completely different. Sometimes they're doing something else. It just, like, feels very hoppity-hoppity.
Yeah, I get that. Like, this one, they're not really talking about the mirror much in this section, I don't think.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's brought up a tiny bit, but it's not really. I guess it's more so to do with, like, U House is said to be haunted.
Right.
But it is a bit of a leap. You're like, you'd think you would have this one on the chapter that he actually used it.
Yeah.
So yeah, the next day Ravyn shows up. So Elspeth goes out to the garden and, like, sits in a tree to avoid him, basically. And the nightmare warns her about Ravyn's magic and fate, and about the U's in general. And he says the Rowans don't make friends with the U's. And you're like, okay, but she's just like, leave me alone.
They say the Rowans don't make friends with the U's?
Just they don't make friends. Like, yeah, the Rowans and the U's aren't good friends.
But they're related. All right.
Right now they are. And she thinks that, like, ever since she asked the nightmare for help on that road when she was attacked by Elm and Ravyn, he's been getting stronger and more potent in her head. And, like, now she feels all of his feelings and his thoughts, and sometimes she mistakes his feelings for her own, and it's, like, getting confusing. But she knows that he's still keeping secrets. Like, interesting. She ends up like walking around the gardens and making herself a flower crown, and she ends up cutting herself on a rose thorn, and then she's like looking at a rose when Ravyn comes over and tells her that the thorns are vicious. And then he cuts the rose off of the bush for her, and he asks, he's sweet in this moment, but he asks if she's well, and she says she is, and she says the garden is beautiful, and she tells him that she used to be afraid of his house because she was told that it was haunted. And he just tells her not to discount that, not to like think that it isn't haunted.
It's like he's like, it could be.
Yeah, which I kind of love. And then he asks if he can like put the flower in her crown, and like very much like wants consent before he touches her. And
Further
she says she thought that
cementing him as the love interest.
Ooh. And she says to him that she thought that they weren't pretending, and he says flowers don't play games, and he puts it in her crown. And she asks how he knew.
How embarrassing is it that he came upon her making a little flower crown for herself?
It's cute.
Really? Ugh, I don't like it.
And so she asks how he knew she was here, and he says if he was avoiding someone, he'd come here. And then he offers her a tour. And he sees that she's like holding her charm, and he tells her that she doesn't need a charm because she's infected. So like this whole time that she's had a charm, not necessary because she's already infected, which is like a revelation.
Yeah, she can go in the mist without it.
Yeah. So he brings her around, and then they end up at the ruins of what he calls the old castle. And the Nightmare's like super interested. And we get that this old castle ruins are older than stone, and it was burnt down, and only one room remains. And like there's strong salt in the air, so like obviously magic. And then there's just like one stone room, that's all that's left, with one dark window, which is the name of the book.
Oh.
Which I just love when they say the name of the book in books. The Nightmare tells her to go in, and she asks why. And he says he wants to see it. And he says a window is all the spirit ever required. And Elspeth's body like wants to obey him, but she makes herself move away.
I'm sad. I really wanted her to go in. I want to know what's inside this area.
We'll get there, just not today. And then I guess Ravyn tells her that he hasn't seen any ghosts here with the mirror card, and she asks what it feels like. And he says it's cold but not unbearable. And he hasn't been able to see the spirits, but he'd probably have to just use it longer. And he like taps the card while he's telling her what it's like, and then he moves towards her and says that she's the only one he can't sneak up on because she can obviously see the color of the card. She asks him then about like the Nightmare's card's ill effects, and she asks if he sees a creature or hears a voice. And he tells her that everyone feels the effects differently, and he says he doesn't see a creature, but he hears him taunting him. And he says that he'll fail, and it's just a voice though, but it's relaying his worst fears, and it's actually his own voice.
Yeah.
Which I assume is not what she wanted to hear.
No, because
she wanted
to be able to confide in him that she's got a weird voice in her head.
Yeah. We do a tiny bit of a jump, and we get that they plan to intercept the Pine's carriage right before he ends up at his home. And Ravyn asks if she's ever used a blade before, and she asks if garden shears count, and he's just like, no. And she says his father said there would be no violence, and asks if she's expected to fight, and he says no, but he figured she'd want to protect herself. So they go to the armory and meet up with Jesper, Elm, John Thistle, and two men that she's never met, and we get that they're Wick and Peter Ivy, and they're brothers. And Elm says, come now, surely you've seen a party of highwaymen before, because she's like, I guess, taken aback by them or something.
Yeah.
So then we get another chapter. Mind the mist, it does not lift. The spirit doth hunt, ever adrift. Stay out of the wood, be wary, be good. The spirit doth hunt, ever adrift. Mind the mist, it does not lift. The spirit ensnares like grain through a sift. Hold tight to your charm, and you'll come to no harm. The spirit ensnares like grain through a sift. So, like, I think the important things are hold tight to your charm, and you'll come to no harm. I think that's the point of that one.
Except for them, because they don't need the charms.
Yeah, very true. So obviously she needs to look like a highwayman man. So Ravyn brings her leggings, and she, like, puts them on, but then she feels super awkward because her butt is out. She normally wears dresses. Yeah. There's always these moments. The nightmare in her head.
Like it. For just once, I wish she would, like, put a dress on and be like, oh my god, I love it. Or, like, put pants on instead of a dress and be like, this is amazing.
Yeah. And the nightmare in her head says, like, the you girl wears pants. And Elspeth is like, yeah, but Jesper is, like, fearsome. And she says she just looks like a stable boy. And he says how she looks is, and perhaps always has been, irrelevant.
Jeez.
And I'm like, is that a nice thing or a mean thing?
To me, that's rude.
Like, yeah, I'm like, it could be either of it, but, like...
I don't think he's the love interest anymore after that.
Right? It really puts a swing in that. Or is he like, I love you for other reasons, and how you look doesn't matter?
I don't know.
So she walks out, and one of the brothers whistles at her, and Ravyn, like, flushes immediately, and you're like, of course he does. But we get that the plan is for them to ride horses to the Black Forest, and then walk and wait for the carriage, and then steal the card, and then come back. And after all of that, she can tell them about the well card in her father's house.
I can't believe that she's, like, gonna betray her father.
Le shrug.
What do you mean, le shrug? But, like, she did already tell them. Like, she sort of already did betray them.
He threw her away. He's a piece of shit.
I guess.
But I do get what you're saying. So everyone kind of disperses, and Ravyn and Elm get her a horse. But she's just like, animals don't like me. And Elm says, like, that tells you something right there, if animals don't like her. He's very wary of her. And Ravyn just says that she needs to stay calm, and the horse will be calm, and he asks if she needs help. And she, like, wants to say no, but, like, she does need help. So they, like, pet the horse together, and she thinks to herself, like, stay calm. But the nightmare says that the horse knows that you're not alone and knows that it's not safe. It's like, that's... okay.
It's
great.
Like, thank you for that. Can you help me at all? Sir.
Yeah, he's being a bit of a dick. And this is only the beginning. So, Ravyn also has to help her up. But he gets flustered because he has to put his hands on her waist. And it makes her wonder what his hands would feel like on her bare skin.
Oh, come on.
And then he picks her up and he puts her on the horse. And she's super nervous, but Ravyn's just like, the horse is only nervous because you are. And Elm says, it's because the horse doesn't know what she is. And then the nightmare just says, the horse knows exactly what she is. And laughs and says, watch this. And then the horse starts to panic and she just gets tossed off. And she, like, is knocked out for a second.
Rude.
Because when she comes... yeah, it's wild. when she comes to, the nightmare is laughing, and she's super dizzy and out of breath, and she says that she told them that animals don't like her. And Ravyn asks her if anything feels broken, and she just thinks her pride, and she asks the nightmare what the hell that was. And he just says it was a bit of fun, and she says she could have died, and he tells her not to be so dramatic because people fall off horses all the time.
I mean...
You're like, you can't be the love interest. That was so shitty.
Do I think that he's wrong? No. Like, she is being a bit dramatic. I almost died.
Yeah. At least she only said it in her head.
Yeah.
So Ravyn has to basically ask her again if she's okay, and she's like, yeah, I'm fine, because she was, like, spaced out having a conversation with the nightmare. And then John Thistle says that she'll be bruised. And then they start to argue about what to do next, but Ravyn just stops them and says that they have to leave in 5 minutes. And everyone goes and scatters to get their shit together, and he asks if she's truly all right. And he, like, runs his hands up and down her ribcage to make sure that they're not broken, I guess. But then he gets super flustered again, and she loves it.
So, like, what's his hang up about courting her again?
Right?
He doesn't seem to hate it.
Right? But then he says her best choice is to ride with the most skilled horseman. And she's like, who's that?
And we think it's going to be him.
We 100% think it's going to be him. I think it's going to be the love interest. So I'm like,
it's going to be him.
Yeah. And then we do a bit of a jump, and she's on a horse with Elm. And I'm like, I guess he's the love interest? Because they're on a horse together. You can't get on a horse with somebody you're not in love with.
Is that a real rule?
Of course. But she thinks, like, he rides brutally, and he complains that she, like, held on way too tight. And I'm like, are we having banter here because they're going to end up together? Like, what is happening? Who is she meant to be with? This was when I was the most confused, I think, in the book.
Yeah.
So they walk into the mist, and everyone has their charms, and the Ivy brothers have, like, hawk feathers, and Jesper has a small femur bone. And Thistle has a dog's canine tooth, and Elm has horsehair. We also get a rundown of the cards. Ravyn has his 2 cards, the Mirror and the Nightmare. Jesper and Elm have a black horse each, and Elm doesn't have his scythe card, which is interesting. And Thistle and the Ivy brothers don't have any cards. So they're, like, just walking through the mist, and she asks Ravyn how he knows where he's going, and he just says practice. And they have to stop to let some deer pass, and she just says, like, the mist is thick, and he says it's the spirit of the wood. And she thinks, like, her aunt used to tell her that the mist could take the shape of animals, but something would be off with the animals, so she kind of wonders if the deer that she saw were actually the spirit of the wood. Like, what's happening here? And then she asks Ravyn if, like, he thinks if they lift the mist, will the spirit stay and blunder? And he tells her that the old book says magic sways like salt water on a tide, and that makes him believe that the spirit is the moon commanding the tide. He says she's neither good nor evil, she's magic and balance. Interesting. And the Nightmare says, the spirit was neglected, no matter her plea. The Rowans erased her, as they once did to me. But she keeps her own time, and I keep a long score. The tide that comes next will blot out the shore. Like, that sounds scary. What does that mean? But Ravyn continues, and he says he doesn't think the spirit will disappear with the mist, but maybe she won't, like, be dangerous to them anymore, and maybe she'll actually rest, which is a nice thought.
Yeah, like, be the, I don't know, like, actually be their, she's like the deity, right?
Yeah, seems like.
So maybe she'll just be a chill
Goddess.
deity.
Yeah, and like stop giving people magic or something. Like maybe she'll just take a nap. A la
Moana.
Oh yeah, I was thinking. Fuck. We talked about the book earlier when I was talking about Two People, One Horse.
Oh yeah.
From Blood and Ash. Yes. Okay. Ravyn stops everyone like 20 feet from the road and gives Elspeth a knife. He's like, you need it or you won't look the part. Because she's like, I don't want to hurt anybody. So they're waiting for a super long time, and he just pulls out a cloth and he puts it on like a mask over his nose and mouth. And she recoils because he looks exactly like he did the night that he attacked her. And he realizes, and he takes it off and he says he's sorry. And she says that she never thought that she'd be dressed like a highwayman with the same man who attacked her, which is fair. And he says if he knew who she was, and she cuts in and says that they were awful. And he says that he came back to see if he could find her. And he says because the prophet card leaves holes in their understanding, so they didn't really know like how she'd be able to help. Yeah. So that's why they tried to steal shit off of her, like
to kill her.
Yeah, it's like
yes, of course, it makes perfect sense now.
Yeah, and he says if he knew that she carried magic and that there are so few of them that do, and he says she is more special than she knows, and it pains him to think that he might have hurt her, and he's very sorry. And like it is a nice apology, but it's also like it was dumb.
Yep.
And she looks at him and thinks that, like, he seems different now as a highwayman than he did when he's, like, being the captain. And she tells him that he's forgiven on one condition. He has to call her Elspeth. And she says that they're about to commit treason after all, so he can call her by her first name.
Valid point.
Yeah. So he smiles and shakes her hand, and then they hear whistles, and that's the warning. So he tells her to put on her mask because it's time.
Dun dun dun.
And that's where we fucking leave it.
Yay.
What a good end to it, but also, what the fuck?
Yeah.
That's how it goes, I suppose.
Yeah, this is gonna sound bad.
Okay.
Is it gonna get better?
I think so.
Okay. Not that it's going poorly right now. It's not. It's good. But do you know what I'm getting from it for some weird reason? I'm getting Divine Rival but vibes.
Okay.
I don't know why, but I am. Even though nothing is happening. Like, it's not the same at all. But for some reason, those are the vibes that I'm getting.
Yeah, I can see that.
So, I don't know. I do, like, my hopes are high that it'll get better.
Yeah.
You did say that you struggled with the first little bit?
Yeah, mostly because it's just so hard to, like...
understand the magic system?
Yeah, but I do really like the magic system now that, like, I've read it. I like the idea of it, and, like, I'd like to get a deck of the cards.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
I feel like that'd be cool.
It would be cool.
Yeah.
Anyway. But yeah. Next week, I'll finally find out who the love interest is. I swear to God. But, yeah. I guess we're going to wrap it up for this week. So, if you want to get in touch with us and share your thoughts on anything you heard in any of our episodes, or if you have any book suggestions, please reach out to us by email at coffeeandcoread@gmail.com or Instagram or Facebook at coffeeandcoread and coffee.coread on TikTok.
So next week we're going to be reading chapters 19 to 27 of One Dark Window. So make sure to follow along and hopefully find out who the main love interest is. And if you're enjoying our chats, don't forget to follow, rate, and review wherever you get our content. Thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll see you on the next page.